Hey there, welcome back to the Acceleration Netcast. In today's episode, we're going to solve the same problem we solved last week, but we're going to do it in a different way. Now, last week, if you remember, we had these two tables. We had this table right here. We had this table right here. This is fake data, but we're going to pretend that it's real data. And what we want to do is we want to create a third table that has a column for phone numbers. It's got a column for name, city, and state. So we need to merge these two tables, but we want to do it in a specific way. We only want to keep rows where the ID appears in both tables. Okay, this is called an inner join. So last week we did this in Microsoft Query. This week we're going to do it in Power Query. Power Query is, you could call it, I guess, a plugin for Excel. It's almost its own standalone application, but it's very good at pushing its results into Excel. It's very well integrated. And if you have a copy of Excel 2013, there's a decent chance that with your license comes a free license for Power Query. Not 100%. You have to go check Microsoft's website. I would give you what the rules are, but they change pretty often, and frankly, I can't remember. But it's worth checking out because you may already have a license for Power Query. You just have to go install it. Okay, so to start off with, I'm going to Alt-Tab over to this workbook because I don't want my data and my model to be in the same workbook. I want to separate those two things. I don't have to, but I think it's a very good idea. So now I'm going to head over to Power Query, and I'm going to get data, and I'm going to get it from a file, and I'm going to get it from Excel. All right, I happen to be in the right folder. If you're not, go navigate to the folder where your data is in. I'm going to click on Data. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to read that file, and it's going to give me some options about what I want to import from it. And here we go. Here are these options. So it sees, oh, there's two tabs in it, and I'm going to assume each tab is basically a table. So which one would you like to import? Well, you can click on one or the other, or you could click Select Multiple Items, which is what we're going to do. And we're going to click that and that. So we're going to import both of these as two separate queries. If you want to get fancy, which we'll do in the next video, you can actually import the folder itself as a table, which is pretty darn cool. But we're not going to do that this episode. We're going to stick with solutions that you can do with the graphical user interface. And so we're going to click these two, and we're going to click the Load button. And right now, you'll notice nothing happens over here. That's because we're loading these as queries, not necessarily data into a range. Which is to say, there's the sort of the definition of this query exists, and the data exists in the workbook, but it doesn't exist in any worksheet. Okay, so we've got our two queries here, and if you look at them, you get a little preview of the data up there. And one thing that you'll notice is the headers are all wrong. It did not automatically promote headers the way that it should. So right now, column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4 should be ID, name, city, state. This may be a feature that's implemented in future versions of Power Query. It probably will be like a checkbox when you're loading the data that just automatically does that for you. But it's easy enough to fix. So I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to hit the Edit button to open up my Power Query window. And it's pretty easy. I'm just going to go to Transform, and I'm going to click Use First Row as Headers. And so now I've added a step to the query. I've added a step where I took what I had before, right, and I've promoted the headers. And so now the output of the query is this. I'm going to go Home, Close, and Load. Notice it still doesn't load it into any particular worksheet. It still exists in the workbook, but it has not been pushed out to a worksheet. Now I'm going to click on this guy, and it's got the same problem, so I'm going to click Edit. Once again, Transform, Use First Row as Headers. I've added the First Row as Headers step to this query, so now the output is this, which is what I want. Go to Home, Close, and Load. Okay, so now I've got the two source tables that I want. I'm going to hover over it and get the previews. There we go. That's the right thing that I want. And what I want to do is I want to join these. Well, it's not called join, it's called merge, but it's the same darn thing. So I'm going to go up here to Power Query, and I'm going to click Merge. This is going to create a new query that takes two tables, in this case tables from other queries, and joins them together. So now we have to pick, well, what do we want to join? It doesn't really matter the order because this is an inner join. I like to start with the table that has the fewest number of columns in it. You'll see why in a second. So I'm going to start with Helpline. And on the right, I'm going to have Customer Review Table. And I want to select which columns I'm going to join on. Now, these happen to be named the same thing, which is very convenient. You just have to pick the, the column that has the values that you want to join with. Now right now this is a left join. If I click only include matching rows, it's going to be an inner join, that is only rows where the ID appears in both tables, which is what I want. And I'm going to click OK. And now I've got this, which looks like maybe there's an error or something is wrong, because this just looks like one of the tables with this weird, mysterious new column attached to it. Well, and I'm not exactly sure why they do this. It's I don't know. Maybe it's useful for some applications, but it sort of defines the join in the first step, and then you actually have to express it in another step. So if you come up here to New Column, and I click this button right here, it says, oh, so each in this column, there's a bunch of different tables that have data in it, and that's sort of the join, and we're going to expand using those tables. You can also aggregate, but that's a bit more complicated. So we're just going to add columns. So we have to select which columns we want to add. Well, we don't want all of them. We don't want ID because then it would appear twice. If I want to, I can use this new column name up here as a prefix to each new column name that I'm going to push out. That way I don't have to worry about two columns being named the same thing. But I'm just going to uncheck that because we don't have to worry about duplicate names. And I'm going to click OK. All right, now there is the results that I want. Now, if you're looking at this, you might say to yourself, well, that's a lot more complicated. It involves a lot more steps than just using vanilla Microsoft Query. And you're right. This might be an example where Microsoft Query is just a flat-out better solution. However, the one nice thing about this is once you're here, you've got access to all the other transformations in Power Query. You know, fancy stuff like you can, if you've got a bunch of blanks and you want to fill them all with the nearest value, you can fill it. If you've got data that was pivoted, you can select several columns and unpivot those columns. Some really cool and very powerful stuff. All right, so we're going to assume that this is exactly what we want. We're going to click Close and Load, but we're not going to click the top one. We're going to click the little arrow version underneath it because we want to Close and Load 2. Now, here it says, all right, so you've got a query. What do you want to do with the results? If we want to, we can only create a connection, which is sort of what we've got over here, where we've got the query in the workbook, but its results are never in any ranges, never in any worksheets. You can click here to add it to the data model so that you could use Power Pivot to do some more advanced analytics on it, or you could just push it into a table, which I think is what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to click, I could do a new worksheet, I'm just going to do an existing worksheet, and I'm going to click Load. There you go. And now later on, sort of just like with MS Query, if you update that source workbook and you want to update the results, you could just go refresh. Oops, click on this and refresh. There should be a refresh all. It's in data. There we go. Refresh all, and it'll refresh all the queries in the right order, so you'll get those results that you want. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next video.